Уважаемые коллеги, уважаемые гости, добрый день. Рада приветствовать вас всех в стенах Московского государственного института международных отношений Министерства иностранных дел Российской Федерации на первом Всероссийском форуме чистого спорта. Форум организован Российским антидопинговым агентством «РУСАДА» в сотрудничестве с МГИМО университетом. Уважаемые И я хотела предоставить слово для приветствия члену наблюдательного совета «РУСАДА», профессору МГИМО Олегу Николаевичу Барабанову.
Добрый день, уважаемые господа, уважаемые дамы, уважаемые гости. Рад приветствовать всех вас в стенах МГИМО университета. Мы очень ценим наше сотрудничество и с Российским антидопинговым агентством, и со спортивным движением России. МГИМО уже на протяжении нескольких лет активно проводит спортивные образовательные программы. У нас есть магистерские программы по спортивной дипломатии, по спортивному менеджменту. Мы проводим курсы повышения квалификации для
sports management. We are also organizing upskilling courses, including with the support of the Olympic Foundation. And we have already had over 400 attendees at these courses. We also have another upskilling program that deals with protecting human rights in sports, and in particular the rights of athletes, as well as legal issues. And we try to keep abreast of the times. Many Russian sports leaders do also address the audiences in this university. Igor Levitin was one of the speakers recently, and we do hope that the forum will be very interesting for you. You will have some food for thought, and you will have some material for your further work, so that clean sports will become a new objective for Russia's sports movement. Thank you. Thank you very much, Professor Barabanov. I would like to give the floor now to another organizer and initiator of this event, who is Veronika Loginova, General Director of the RUSADA agency. Good morning, dear colleagues and friends. We are very happy to see you here in this room today. It is great that we have so many people attending this event, and it shows just how prepared we are to fight the existing challenges. And hopefully today we will lay the foundation for further all-Russian forums of clean sports. And I'd like to start by thanking distinguished delegates and guests who decided to participate in the opening ceremony. In particular, I would also like to thank Ms. Tamara Shashikhina. Let's give her a round of applause, and MGIMO University as a whole. It is great that we've been able to organize this event within such a short time period, and we have a very tightly packed agenda. We developed a whole program of roundtables to make sure that everyone who is present here would be able to participate in the debate and discussion. In this room, there are a number of people representing the healthcare industry and the healthcare sector, not only the sports sector. We also have lawyers, political scientists, and officials from various organizations and structures that fight doping in sports. There are also lots of officials in this room who tackle the anti-doping portfolio in their sports federations. And I'd also like to thank our colleagues from Belarus and Kyrgyzstan. Let's give them a round of applause too. We will participate in roundtables and conferences. We will have exchange of opinion, and tomorrow at a roundtable we will involve representatives of other countries as well. Some of those people will be present online, and we will be able to discuss a whole array of topics. And as my closing remarks here, I'd like to thank you for coming here in such a large number. And I'm really happy to note that we have such a big number of esteemed guests here and honorary guests, and this shows that we all stick to the main objective for us, that we want to give our athletes an opportunity to engage in clean sports. I wish you a very fruitful discussion. Thank you so much. Ms. Loganova, thank you. And further, I would like to give the floor to Deputy Minister for Sports of the Russian Federation, Mr. Andrei Fedorov. Thank you so much. Dear participants, attendees of this meeting, let me welcome you here at MGIMO University on behalf of the Sports Ministry. And we see here a lot of high-ranking officials and experts across the anti-doping community. And in general, this is a priority for our national policy to promote an anti-doping zero doping tolerance in sports. In cooperation with the academic community of Russia, our colleagues from the Olympic and Paralympic committees, Russia's Ministry of Sports has been elaborating detailed recommendations and guidelines on anti-doping mechanisms and upgrading them in the country. And it will be further streamlined to various civil organizations and other institutions involved in the area of sports. The ministry coordinates the activities of federal bodies, including executive bodies in sports, and a lot depends here on harmonizing our approach to handling anti-doping. In general, we believe that we need to coordinate our efforts including with the academic community, research, think tanks, and our colleagues from the sports federations. And we should contribute to zero tolerance towards doping in sports. And this is a major objective that the country has been facing for a number of years now. And now it's probably obvious that we have been working quite intensively in that direction, and we have already, this cooperation has already yielded quite positive outcomes. I'm pretty sure that Ms. Loganova is going to speak on this further, but the outcomes and the positive results are already there. In any case, our objective and the end game here, so to speak, is clear, is promoting clean sports in Russia. As you're probably aware, Russia has always consistently advocated Russian sports and Russian athletes' interests, including in the international arena as well, and the UNESCO structures and institutions. Last year, Russia was re-elected to the convention UNESCO Presidium, and this testifies to the fact that Russia has made some progress in this area. This re-election shows that we have been able to achieve quite a lot in Russia in terms of anti-doping measures. And obviously, the credit goes to the entire sports community in the country. The contemporary system of anti-doping controls in Russia is in line, almost 100% with all the requirements of the respective documents. And this has been confirmed by RUSADA and as well as the Olympic and Paralympic committees. In general, the Russian sports ministry believes that we have more than enough mechanisms at hand in order to fight doping as a whole, as a phenomenon, so to speak. We are aware of the fact that we have administrative power resources as well as human resources and managing ones, and we also have enough political will that is wielded, vested in the political leadership of our country in order to uproot this evil in general in Russian sports. And obviously, implementing such objectives, we need to have personal investment of each coach, each athlete in the end result. That is to say, everyone who is involved in sports in this way or another. We do believe that it is exactly this kind of approach and this level of responsibility that will serve as a guideline in order to make progress in combating doping. We strongly believe that in terms of the anti-doping policy, what should be prioritized is raising awareness about prohibited substances and methods, and obviously the implications of using such substances for athletes. Our main objective that we have set for ourselves is to prevent all ways of resorting to doping. And just like in other areas, we believe that punishment and penalties for doping must be imminent, and this must become a key restraining factor. In general, the agenda of the Forum for Clean Sports shows that all the participants and attendees are focused on finding and identifying the key challenges and eradicating them, finding the most effective measures to respond to those challenges in sports in Russia, but also beyond. You know that doping is also a widespread phenomenon in international sports. As a result of our discussions at the roundtables, one thing that we should arrive at is an optimal pattern for cooperation, engaging all the participants of sports in general for us to work out a consolidated stance in order to avert the use of doping in competitions and tournaments. I am sure that the forum discussions that will be held at the roundtables will have a positive effect for all of us, but this will also have a positive impact for the national interests, for RUSADA, and for the research community, because I see here a lot of colleagues representing various research organizations, especially well-known ones. Some of these are schools of sports law that are famous in Russia, and we do hope to be able to produce a positive result for Russian sports during these discussions. We thank the organizers of this conference and this forum, especially given the scale and extent of the event, because we've had a lot of participants registered here, and we have a lot of participants online as well, which testifies to the fact that this topic is indeed very, very relevant today, and all of us share the idea that this issue has to be eradicated once and for all in Russian and international sports. Ms. Loginova, I thank you wholeheartedly for your work, and I wish everyone great and productive discussions. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Fedorov.
Thank you very much, Andrei Mikhailovich. Now I would like to give the floor to Andrei Pozdnyakov. Thank you. President of the Olympic Committee. Thank you, dear colleagues, dear participants of the forum, those who are present today in this wonderful room, those who are online with us. And first of all, I'd like to congratulate all of us on the opening of the first All-Russia Forum of Clean Sport, and to thank the Russian Anti-Doping Agency and GIMO for organizing such an important event. We are coming through very difficult times, and Russia has been pushed aside in sports, and it's not just. And so in order to develop the attitude that does not accept doping, we've made a lot. We've made a great contribution. We've set up a system, or setting up the system, that is fighting against doping. The Olympic Committee over the recent years has been continuing to fight against doping, and we stick to the Olympic Charter and to the Olympic Anti-Doping Code. It has come into force recently, and it regulates the functions of both the Olympic committees and those countries signatories of the code. And the Articles 24 and other articles set forth the following the compliance with the code and promotion of anti-doping education in line with international education requirements, the observance of independence of anti-doping agencies, national anti-doping agencies, and the Russian Federation now makes an effort to comply with all these requirements. And in case, the article also states that in case of violations, we have to investigate these cases. And Russia is focused on implementing all these requirements. We want to provide for honest fight among athletes and competition, honest competition. A lot of other agencies are involved in this area. This year, the Moscow University of Sports and Tourism has become one of our partners, and our colleagues will talk about it today. A new anti-doping code has been recently implemented, and Russia has introduced a number of measures. And together with the members of the Paralympic Committee, we have developed and passed a number of provisions and laws. Together with RUSADA, we have also approved the educational plan on anti-doping topics. The Olympic Committee has always been especially focused on education aimed at anti-doping education and training. It's one of our priorities, including in the strategies up to 2028. And the committee will stick to this strategy over the next 6 years. One of the most important issues is financial support of the educational strategy and the support of the coordinators of anti-doping committees. We've identified the bottlenecks, and it became clear that the National Federation needs qualified and skilled employees who would be involved in anti-doping. And of course, for this, we need education, and we implemented an additional program and curriculum to raise the skills of our anti-doping coordinators. So we finance the pay, the wages and of anti-doping coordinators and their training. Another important area of our work is the follows. In Moscow, on the 4th of June, we held the International Forum of Young Olympic Games participants athletes. So one of the focuses of the efforts is again education and training, including the education in anti-doping issues since the early age. And this forum was thought out as a joint project. And that's why we held it on the day of the children's protection. We want to protect them from the negative impact of doping using prohibited substances. Another important issue is the approval of the plan on anti-doping topics and events that are aimed at various targeted groups. For example, all Russian national federations and the groups of young athletes, and we are implementing this plan very actively. So we will pursue anti-doping policy very actively, and we should understand that despite all the negative external circumstances, we have to improve the quality of our work, and we have to provide for clean sports. And for this, we need concerted actions. And in our athletic community now, we have some free time, but it doesn't mean that we can relax. At any moment, at any point of time, Russian athletes should be ready to get back to the international arena with a very high potential and competition potential. That means that we should be very actively involved in anti-doping efforts. And I'm sure that this forum will make its contribution into raising awareness and making anti-doping stance accepted by everybody. Dear colleagues, I'd like to add just the Pavel Alexeyev has talked about education, and I have not mentioned that we have representatives of education here. For example, Belausov, the academician and director of the Olympic University, and we're going to talk about this area. And we are we have a lot of joint events and fora and other important things. For example, recently we held an audit which presented all the information related to this work, the anti-doping efforts and the prevention of anti-doping. Of course, on our own, we were not able to implement all the targets and the plans. That's why we have joined our efforts. All the important agencies take part in this work, and we are trying to show an integral approach in dealing with the problem. So the education area, educational efforts have received a very high evaluation because it has shown an integrated approach, and all the international standards, the recent international standards, have been taken into account in this work. And so I'd like to stress that we have reached such outcomes only through our concerted efforts. Thank you very much. Of course, the role of education is extremely important, and especially have to stress it here in GIMO, at GIMO. Now I'd like to give the floor to Pavel Rashkov, President of the Paralympic Committee of Russia. Dear participants, I'm very glad to greet you here, and I'm sure that forum will become one of the important formats where we will discuss pressing issues of anti-doping efforts. We are very happy that we are holding this forum at MGIMO because we have long-standing contacts with MGIMO. Our experts have been trained at MGIMO, and the training was very useful. They were very interesting, and our experts really needed them. Despite the current geopolitical situation, and you know that the rights of the Paralympic committees have been suspended. Nevertheless, we continue our anti-doping efforts, and together with RUSADA and other agencies, we file the necessary information, and we fill in all the necessary blanks. We're implementing educational programs that were prepared 5 years ago. This program has been very highly evaluated, and it's being implemented very actively. More than 3,000 athletes and coaches have been trained in the frame of this program, and RUSADA was the first agency that trained such specialists, those who have a right to deliver lectures in these athletic themes and to deliver lectures on the topics. And we've just decided to conduct once again such kind of training. Also, I'd like to thank RUSADA once again that we are actively involved in the work aimed at educating young athletes. It's very important for us to show how they should, to show them that they should should be aware of negative consequences of doping, and we go to those areas, to those places where they train, and now we are waiting for this decision by WADA with regards to RUSADA, whether RUSADA is in line with their requirements, though we are not founder, but still we stick to this criteria of the establishment of the International Paralympic Committees. And so we think that now we'll get access to the best practices of anti-doping efforts, and they will be disseminated. Thank you very much, Mr. Rashkov Pavel Alexeyevich. We have stressed that GIMO, as an educational center involved in training and educating international personnel. Of course, we receive support from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Russian Federation. So that's why I'd like to give floor to Ambassador at Large and the Special Envoy of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs on the issue of international athletic sports cooperation, Mr. Horev Mikhail. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, unfortunately, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Sergei Lavrov, has a very tight schedule and he was not able to take part in this forum. And that's why I represent our ministry. So first of all, I'd like to thank Veronika Viktorovna for inviting me for this important event. Also, I'd like to thank the MGIMO leadership for focusing on these issues related to sports. First of all, I'd like to share my international assessments in the context of the development of international sports with regards to the topic we are discussing today. Today, the world is going through hard times, and the West has been fighting against Russia because we are trying to protect our own interests, and we are fighting for multipolar world and for the protection of human rights. And the sports is becoming more important as it's becoming a more important element of the global civilization. It's a must for prioritizing healthy lifestyle and health, and on the other hand, it leads to better understanding, communication, and non-discrimination. Sports is an effective mechanism which helps to prevent conflicts among states. And this topic is becoming more important on the agenda of international organizations, including the United Nations, that is a great coordinator in international affairs. So the Organization of Olympic and organizers of Olympic and Paralympic Games stress the importance of sports. In 2013, the 6th of April was proclaimed as the Day of Sports, and the corresponding resolution stressed that sports is a factor of sustainable development. Such resolutions were approved later in 2020, and this issue remains an open question.
International sports cooperation is engulfing an increasing number of countries, and when it comes to Russia, its achievements in this area are well known. We held a highly successful Sochi Olympics, the World Cup in football, and many other tournaments that contributed to a stronger Russian authority in sports. There are lots of prominent Russian athletes who are famous not only in Russia but also beyond. And it would probably seem obvious that sports should unite people rather than polarize them. But recently, there have been forces that are trying to manipulate sports for their own interests. One graphic example is an attempt to impose a boycott of Russian athletes on an international scale. And obviously, it is counterproductive in political and sports terms. Obviously, this has nothing to do with sports. It is rather a desire to hurt our country. And we can obviously say that there is lots of discrimination based on nationality. There are lots of blatant examples of human rights violations in terms of Russian athletes, and this looks all the more all the more blatant and atrocious when it comes to discriminating against Russian Paralympians. Russia has been trying to raise this issue at the United Nations Council on Human Rights, which is the main body on human rights in the United Nations, because it has always been apparent to Russia that sports and human rights are tied, and we've been trying to stick to the Olympic Charter and the Olympic Declaration. Obviously, when you look at the declaration and the charter, you will see that it proclaims a competition as a peaceful way to promote a mutual understanding, as well as tolerance, integrity, dignity, and responsibility. That is to say, all the values and principles that underpin the very concept of human rights. Sports' potential to unite people must and should be used in order to advance human rights standards, the ones that are supposed to be universal. And starting from 2013, Russia, together with a number of like-minded countries, has been pushing for a resolution of encouraging human rights protection through sports and Olympic ideals. This document, or rather draft document, has been unilaterally supported, or almost unilaterally supported, by the United Nations states. So this shows just how much potential of cooperation sports has. And we strongly advocate universal human values in sports, but regrettably, the Western countries, or so-called collective West, has been hit by an anti-Russian hysteria, and this has been affecting Russian sports and Russian athletes as well. The Western countries have been trying to discourage Russia from being a friend of sports, but this group of friends of sports will not be able to exist without Russia. When it comes to illegal bans on Russian athletes from participating in sports tournaments, bypassing legal instruments and legal bodies, I would like to point here to political instruments and mechanisms and tools. Unfortunately, many of them are non-binding mechanisms, but we still continue to use those mechanisms in order to draw the attention of the international community to violations of Russian athletes' rights. We regularly submit that information to the United Nations Commissioner on Human Rights as reports, and Russia continues to advocate clean sports in line with the Olympic Charter. We oppose politicization of sports, and we will continue to stick to that policy. The principal position of the Russian Federation is supported by other participants of the Olympic movement. This is clearly seen in other international platforms and international cooperation at large. We are very happy to see the response to that issue by the Chinese side, because Beijing does clearly share Russia's concerns and Russia's approaches. It is very important to have a constructive dialogue aimed at building a new sustainable system for international sports cooperation, which is based on mutual respect for the interests of each other. And when it comes to external international structures that are under pressure from some actors and certain stakeholders, it is clear that this kind of configuration generates a lot of problems, and we can say that the international sports system is now in a crisis. In this regard, we believe that we should look at new forms of international cooperation in sports, and in particular, I mean forging ties between countries and federations which are willing to cooperate in good faith. I mean, this is probably half of the entire world, half of the entire humanity. This could also engage organizations like the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, BRICS, or the Commonwealth of Independent States. We have been developing our relations with countries from these organizations in politics, economy, and humanitarian sphere, but also in sports recently. And there are a number of legal instruments underpinning that cooperation. We have also been investing a lot of effort in that area in terms of the sports community, which has been very actively participating in forging ties with our international partners, trying to communicate to the international audience that this kind of pressure on Russia is fraught with very adverse consequences for the International Olympic Committee. On our part, Russian Foreign Ministry is prepared to assist all the organizations and institutions involved in sports in Russia in order to enhance Russia's positions in international sports. And thank you very much for your attention. Thank you very much, Mr. Khoriv. Obviously, developing sports would have been impossible without sports doctors and the officials who are in charge of the health of our athletes. And I'd like to further give the floor to Deputy Director for Emergency Department at the Russian Healthcare Ministry, Ms. Natalia Markoran. Dear Ms. Loginova, dear members of the Presidium and colleagues. On behalf of the Ministry of Healthcare of Russia, let me welcome and greet the participants of the Forum for Clean Sports. Anti-doping legislation is obviously an issue pertaining to all the professional athletes, but in terms of ensuring anti-doping systems, the doctors are very important. In this regard, I would like to first and foremost pinpoint that the Russian Healthcare Ministry has elaborated a draft law on amending a federal law on physical education and sports, and this draft law is supposed to introduce the term of sports medical professional into the law, and this term will cover doctors and other medical professionals that offer healthcare services to athletes. As of today, on the 14th of December, there will be a first hearing in a committee of this draft law, and today we have highlighted certain priorities for developing sports in Russia, which include improving physical education in Russia, advertising and promoting a healthy lifestyle, as well as enhancing the medical and human resources potential in sports. And obviously, these objectives are very important to make sure that Russian citizens, regardless of the state of their health, regardless of their age and gender, would have access to physical education, to exercising, and clean sports, professional sports, which will enjoy zero tolerance policy towards doping. This forum brings together professionals from both the medical, healthcare, and sports community who are keen to develop sports as a factor of social and economic growth of Russia and improving the living standards of Russian citizens. We wish all the participants of the forum very fruitful and productive work and good health. Thank you very much. By the way, statistically speaking, we have a lot of doctors who specialize in professional medicine who are present here. And tomorrow we are going to have a very interesting roundtable. We will be happy to see tomorrow doctors at the roundtable. We will discuss the substances which have recently been prohibited from use in sports. Thank you very much, colleagues. I would like to give the floor to Executive Director of Lawyers Association in Russia, Ms. Elena Spiridonova. Good afternoon. I represent here the organizers of RUSADA. As you probably know, among these organizers are the Russian Lawyers Association and International Association for Protection of Health. And we believe that one of our main tasks is building the governing bodies, the council, and the procedure of electing and appointing a general director. But as far as the rest of the issues are concerned, we decided to leave that to the professionals. But on my part, I would like to say that indeed we have been able to build a highly professional council. Yes, indeed, that was not part of the original document, part of the original intention, but still we announced openly that we were holding a competition, contest, and we received hundreds of applications from people who wanted to become part of that council. And obviously the people who are present here, including Natalia Sokolova, who is head of that council. She's also a head of department at Moscow State Legal Academy, and her deputy is Mr. Rachevsky, who is a well-known lawyer. We also have here Mr. Oleg Barabanov and other people who have PhD degrees in medicine. So we have brought together a lot of professional lawyers, and they brought all the documents in line with international law in terms of sports. And we also held an open election for the post of the general director, and obviously the fact that we chose elected Ms. Veronika Loganova is probably no surprise, because Ms. Loganova is very well known in the sphere of professional sports in Russia. Now, when it comes to the decision that we are all expecting, I don't know whether we are looking forward to that decision or dreading that decision, but our principle was do what you should and come what may. So whatever decision is made in December, we are ready to face it. Thank you very much, Ms. Spiridonova. Let's go back to education and sports, and I would like to give the floor to rector of the Russian International Olympic University, Dr. Belousov. Thank you very much, dear colleagues. I do feel like it's a little bit difficult for me to make the closing remarks here at this opening session, because a lot of the things have already been mentioned. I feel like I'm a doctor a little bit. I'm also partly a lawyer and partly a teacher. And you probably feel the same, because we are all team members, and we have a team that is fighting a certain evil. And doping, in a way, is a cancer, a tumor that has hit a lot of countries, not only Russia. This is, in a way, like a pandemic of sorts. So the question remains, how do we fight this tumor? I believe that there are two ways to fight it. The first one is using force, law enforcement bodies in particular, and the Russian Internal Ministry and others. But we use punishment when doping is already there and the fact of using it has already been established. This is followed by law enforcement measures. However, the second way, so the first way is more or less like the stick. However, the second way is about building so-called zero tolerance against doping, or I would even say an anti-doping culture in the country. I believe that this anti-doping culture should be seen in the same way as an anti-narcotics, anti-drugs culture. Doping should be seen as a very dangerous, lethal drug, just like narcotics in society. So for that, we need a system that would underpin the very idea of an anti-doping culture. In December 2017, together with RUSADA, we signed our first agreement. And that was an agreement on joint activity and joint cooperation. And we understood that this kind of cooperation was supposed to cover the entire society, not only the people who are involved in sports and the Olympic movement. That is to say, that system should also cover athletes, coaches, the children, so child athletes, the managers as well. So everyone who is involved in sports in this way or another, everyone who may face the issue of doping in this way or another. So together with RUSADA, what we did was elaborate a whole number of programs, and those are different programs in terms of their duration and intensity. But in this way or another, those were anti-doping education programs. And in our university, we have long-term programs and curriculums. We had special courses and modules integrated into those study programs. So, for instance, if you look at sports management, we had a module of 12 hours. In terms of a program, we had this module of anti-doping measures. And today, together with Moscow State University for International Relations, MGIMO University, Moscow State University, Lomonosov University also issued diplomas together with us. So that was a double diploma program. So that was 34-hour module and 18-hour module, respectively. And these programs are not available or accessible for everyone, although there is a lot of demand for this kind of training. We do try to involve many other colleagues from other universities and other organizations in our education and training programs. And this means that I'm talking here about both long-term and short-term programs. In the year 2021, we organized a number of courses, each of which lasted 26 hours, where they were essentially commissioned by the Russian government. And those courses were aimed at training anti-doping coordinators. I believe that that was a very timely measure, and that was done at the commission of the Olympic Committee. We were supposed to train 150 professionals, which we did at the offline courses. And right now, in half of the national federations, in terms of summer and winter sports, we have the professionals who studied in those training programs. And in other words, this means that the program has been very, very effective.
Everybody wants to come to Sochi, but not everybody can afford it. Time and money are constraints. So that's why we organize online programs. Every week we have an online course aimed at showing the information about anti-doping efforts, and we invite our colleagues from the CIS countries, for example, our friends from Kyrgyzstan and Belarus took part in them, and we invite all those who are interested in that. So about 1,700 participated in our courses, of course, and our training programs. Of course, it's not a very big number, so we need to develop the anti-doping efforts and to continue them. And also we decided to target children, and that's why we prepared a special anti-doping program, training program targeted at children in a entertainment format from 10 to 16 years old. So it's an interactive anti-doping course for young athletes. Very interesting. So we invite everybody. And then we are planning to hold a week of training program aimed at our athletes. And so we invite all those who are ready to fight against doping. We have also free online training programs of upgrading. We'll have them in March and in April. What should you do? You should register. The number of places is limited, so you should be quick if you are interested in it. Dear friends, if we join efforts, we will be able to remove this tumor. Thank you for your attention. Thank you, Lev Sergeyevich. Today, we are just starting this tradition. We are launching this tradition of Russia's forum. At our initiative, we believe that we'll choose different hosting cities, and the next forum will take place in Sochi. Nobody will be against it. So this is how RUSADA operates. But you see, people are very happy to go to Sochi. Thank you very much, Lev Sergeyevich. Sochi is a city we like very much. Here, now it hosts the Congress of Young Researchers, and our GIMO delegation is there. But we just stayed here in Moscow because we are among these forum organizers. So the floor is given to Logina Veronika. I'd like to make a short presentation, dear friends. I think we keep up with the schedule, so I have enough time for my presentation. Maybe you'll have questions after the presentation, and we'll have a time for a coffee break and networking. And so if you have some questions, you may ask them during the coffee break. If you have any questions with regard to new methods, I'll be able to introduce you to my colleagues who are more specialized in the topic. So we'll do in the following way. We'll discuss all the interesting aspects after my presentation. So my presentation is about what we are involved in RUSADA. What are the areas, the most important areas of interaction? What problems we are faced with? And sometimes we are able to cope with them on our own, sometimes with your help. Okay. So all the presentations will be sent to you if you are interested in it, so you'll have access to it. Okay. So let's start. Just a few words about what we're involved in, what RUSADA is involved in. I'd like to say a few words about RUSADA. We employ about 68 specialists, 68 experts that have been additionally trained, and all the new employees received an in-house training. More experienced employees help them. So we have 68 doping control experts. We have special chaperones, and all the work related to testing have been submitted to WADA, and there were no questions. Yesterday, the press published that our activities have been positively assessed, and there were comments in the mass media that the operational activities of RUSADA leave no doubts, call no questions. Sometimes mass media distort the information. There are a lot of reprints, especially it's negative. If it's negative information, there is some problems with translation. So if you have any questions, just come to us. We have a special employee who a public relation officer, Galina Kavrova, and she will help you to find true information, clear information, because this flow of negative information is a big problem for us. Yesterday, we also read with great joy that WADA doesn't have any questions with regards to our testing, with regards to our investigation, so no questions about all this. As far as testing is concerned, we'll discuss them during the coffee break, and we can also discuss the work of chaperones during the coffee break. So what are our values? First of all, operational independence. We have developed an additional regulation that explains the meaning of this term, of this value. What is it, operational independence? Sometimes I can hear from my colleagues that we don't come to you because you are operationally independent, but that's a different thing in testing and in processing the testing results. One thing is operational independence, the other is cooperation, interaction, and we need it as well. And as we develop cooperation, we are able to to attain good results. And there is a special document explaining the meaning of operational independence, and we can also show you it. As far as the review of documents is concerned, we've done a lot here. It relates to the membership, to the rules of membership, and a couple of weeks ago, we received a new charter from the Ministry of Justice. So all the documents have been agreed with WADA in order to ensure the operational independence. Another rule, a very important rule, is the observation of international standards. And we have a new position, the manager of compliance. and he or she looks after the RUSADA compliance with international standards, and it's being supervised and monitored inside the organization. It's just some words about our values, about the status of the organization. Now I'd like to talk about the main area of our activities. Quite recently, we have heard quite information that they said that the inspectors came to them and said that they are inspectors from RUSADA, and the question was whether RUSADA is able to conduct such tests. Yes, we can do it, and just I want to tell you that there is no restriction in this area. So all these areas of our activities are being done without any restrictions, because there were some questions with regards to our powers to conduct testing. So testing is one of the most important areas of our operation. The second one is investigation. And I'd like also to praise this area. The auditing also has evaluated very positively the results of our activities here. Then the processing of results. We are also involved in it. I'll describe it a little bit later. I'll just give you a picture in brief. And another important factor, and we'll discuss it during our discussions, is the processing of results. So education, again, we've discussed it, and we focus on this area. I'd like to praise our department employees and all those who are present here, because we're involved in this area all together. And I'd like to thank all of you for your assistance. Without your assistance, we won't be able to be engaged in this area, and we won't be able to reach such positive results. And I'd like also to stress that athletes make an important contribution into it. And you've heard about the program of ambassadors, and it has been very highly evaluated. Actually, RUSADA ambassadors are present here today, and we'll give them the floor. And the last one, the permissions, issuing permissions for therapeutic usage. Yes, we can do it, though there are some problems, because we do not receive many requests. We have many medical doctors here today, and so we'll discuss this issue in greater detail. We'll have a round table on this problem, and we'll discuss why is it so. Also, the chairman of the department on therapeutic usage, Ms. Islambekova, is present here. So the evaluation of the activities of the operation of the committee was very highly evaluated. So the evaluation was very high. But we have issues to discuss, and so we'll discuss it in greater detail. As far as testing is concerned, it's also an important separate issue. So what is the difficulty we're confronted with? It relates to logistics. We cooperate with the companies that have to deliver the tests, and we really are experiencing difficulties here because we don't have our own laboratory. So the blood delivery is an issue. And I think that our colleagues from Belarus are facing the same issues and will discuss how we cope with these difficulties. So the first problem is logistics. The second is payments, because we use foreign laboratories and we know what are the problems with the payments, but we have found some we've found access to the payment systems. So the plan was about 11,000 tests that would be able to provide the required level of testing, which would guarantee that our athletes are ready to participate in international events at any time, and to guarantee that they are clean, honest, and doping-free. There were problems with logistics, with equipment, with payment. So how many tests were done? So we didn't want to reduce the rates and to reduce the number of tests. And we decided that we'd be able to keep up this level. And so we decided to stick to the initial plan. And today we can see that we have selected about 10,600 tests, and in the end we'll be able to perform what we have decided according to the plan. So you can see all the pictures, figures on the slides, and the next slide is about violations, the punishment and violations. So we focus on education, on prevention of doping. Nevertheless, there is a procedure of processing the results, and I don't mean that this year we have more violations than last year. We'll discuss it on the eve of the new year, but here you can see that there were different violations. For example, limbs, there were 29 cases, but the largest number of violations relate to the identification, detection of prohibited substances. And also there is a violation when an athlete refuses to come or just try to avoid it. And there were 3 cases of falsification or an attempt of falsification, and 3 cases of the using of prohibited substance or method. And our main task is to know anti-doping rules and to stick to them. Quite recently, we had a very interesting dialogue with athletes, and I came to a conclusion that some of them do not know about the procedure of processing the results. The question was asked, do you know about the administrative revision if the rule of access is violated? And the athletes had no information about it.
There are lots of other issues that are very well known and that are always discussed in conferences and other events, but there are also those things that have to be explained further. So many people are unaware about their rights. Many athletes don't really know what they are entitled to. So they said they have no idea about this administrative revision or review procedure, but they need to know that, and we need to inform them of that. When it comes to the substances that have been discovered so far, obviously what tops the list here is anabolic steroids. But I'd like to draw your attention to a different thing. We have 15 cases or samples with meldonium, and that applies to different sports, including winter sports and summer sports as well. And this is something that we will further discuss at a session that was designed for doctors and healthcare professionals. This is outrageous, and let's talk about it further tomorrow. Now, when it comes to the challenges that we have, I've already mentioned that the equipment that we buy in Switzerland are difficult to transport to Russia because of logistical issues. You know that we do not produce or manufacture doping testing equipment in Russia, hence the difficulties that we have, but still, when it comes to labs, on this slide, you can see that most of the cooperation that we have is with Cybersdorf out, which is our main partner. They accept our payments, and they are good at this logistical issues. The third place is held by Ankara in Turkey, and this is a country that actually saved us in a way. Why? When it comes back to logistical issues and transportation, obviously we did have issues with transporting blood samples. You know that you can only deliver blood to a lab within a certain period of time. And if that period of time is exceeded, that blood sample is declared invalid for testing. So together with our Turkish partners, we struck a deal, an agreement, and all of the blood samples, or most of the blood samples, are now sent to Turkey. And Turkey accounts for 21% of all the samples of urinal samples and blood samples as well. And we are able to observe all the rules and guidelines for that testing. What we are working on, though, right now is, even though we do find ways to respond to challenges, we do not only seek to find ways ways out of certain difficult situations, but we also think of how we should catch up with new methodologies and new approaches and techniques. So from here, let's talk about the new methods that we are working on. The method of dry blood stains. If you were there, if you attended the previous Olympics, you know that there are two ways for testing an athlete's blood. The first one is the dry blood samples, when you have a little bit of blood collected from a finger of an athlete, and another way is when you fix a certain device on a person's shoulder that collects your blood. Well, why is this dry blood stain method more useful, and why is it better in general? Well, first, the athlete does not lose a lot of blood. Then the transportation is obviously much easier. And this is the method we are working on right now. But we are going to have a lot of things to do because for the reasons that we have national legislation in Russia that regulates transportation of doping samples across the country and beyond the country. But together with the Ministry of Sports, we will be able to push through the according amendments. At the Olympics, this way of testing blood samples has already been put in practice. And together with the Russian Healthcare Ministry, we hope to be incorporating this methodology into our daily practice. The next issue that we are working on, or rather challenge that we are facing, this might sound shocking, but still we have an issue with lack of paper. You know that for protocols of anti-doping testing, you need very special paper of special quality. And this is the challenge that we've been facing. You know that we have printing companies, but we do not have access to that special paper. And we'd like to thank our colleagues from Belarus, from Minsk. And it took them only 24 hours to print all the protocols. And we've been cooperating with our colleagues from Belarus because that kind of paper is available widely in Minsk. However, starting from next year, from 2023, one innovation technology that we would like to use is paperless solutions or paperless anti-doping controls. This is a system when you fill in all the protocol forms on a laptop or a tablet. And this is a system that has yet to be implemented because RUSADA is still testing that system. It's not running very smoothly, and there are certain bugs that have to be fixed. But this paperless solution will allow us to avoid this problem of lacking the paper that we need. Now let's talk about the more positive things, because I've been dwelling so much on the negatives. First and foremost, this applies to action that has to do with educational and study programs. In 2022, RUSADA introduced new study programs for various target audiences. This applies first and foremost to athletes who cooperate with the teachers in terms of elaborating the study plan and carrying out the educational, the conferences and other events. And we will have athlete ambassadors. When we have those ambassadors representing their federations, sports federations, we can see how much enthusiasm they have for the whole program. We now have an ambassador pool, and if you have an athlete in your national federation who might say, we also have people who want to work as ambassadors, sports ambassadors for you, let us know, and we will try and incorporate them and put them on that committee. We even have people who have been disqualified in sports. It is a pity that we do not have a lot of attention from that group of athletes, but this is a requirement, a set standard, and we would really love more athletes who have been disqualified to attend our program. We are actually very thankful to those who have been volunteering to design and to design and make videos. You can actually subscribe to our Telegram channel. In RUSADA, we do not have any commercials or advertising, but instead what you have is an access to all the latest news pertaining to RUSADA. You will know of all the latest events. You will know that Hipoxan has been, for instance, put on a drug monitoring program and other things. It is easy to use, easy to access, and quite intuitive. And you will also keep up to date with all the useful news. I believe this is the key information that I wanted to convey. And once again, in accordance with the principle that we have two tracks to fight doping. The first is the punishment, or the sticks, so to speak, way of dealing with doping. In terms of violation, you've seen that we do not have a lot of violations. We're going to speak a little bit about that in detail, but still, I'm pretty sure that education platforms will help us tackle this. The second track, and the second way of dealing with doping is educational programs. And today we are going to have very interesting presentations on education in anti-doping in sports. You can speak forever about how the culture is changing and how many people are attending this forum, including those who are actually involved in this whole issue. But the figures are going to speak for themselves at this conference. Indeed, it proves that the sports culture is changing, and there is a significant shift in this work that we are doing. We are moving very fast forward ahead, so as the Russian sports would become cleaner. And today we are going to talk about, for instance, the findings of polling, and those are the results that confirm what I have said. Thank you very much for your attention. Dear Ms. Loganova, thank you very much for this presentation. I believe that everyone will be able to put this knowledge to good use. This is a final stage, so to speak, of our session, and I'd like to thank our speakers for finding the time, in spite of your very busy schedules, to join us today at this forum. Also, I'd like to thank our dear audience and our conference interpreters who have been translating into English, but also the team of organizers who did everything in their power to organize this event within a very short period of time. Now we have a lunch break until 14 o'clock. You can see a food court on the first and fifth floors in these buildings, and please be back by 2 p.m. Thank you.